Umamusume is exploding in popularity right now, and justifiably so. There are a lot of things it gets right. Okay, sorry, using the song is cheating. But can we talk about how, of all the ways to put a spin on the gacha genre, this might be the best? I've poured hours into gacha games, and I think it ultimately boils down to a few key things. In most gachas, units are front and center the most important thing about your account. And since they usually vary so wildly in terms of how good they are, which specific units you end up rolling can drastically change your experience. They're usually so pivotal, in fact, that the complementary weapon or support gachas are just a win more. And for this reason, you take the best character over the best support 99% of the time. Next is the wall. What happens when your game is just a bunch of damage checks and you don't meet the threshold? Well, in a gacha, this usually means you just can't progress. Even games that allow some form of interaction only increase the odds by so much, usually not enough to even dream of passing the level. And in this scenario, grinding is usually the way to move forward, but it's often either way too easy to the point where it's not even fun anymore, or so mind-numbingly difficult you're practically playing 5D chess. Now, let's take a look at Umamusume, and it's fascinating. First off, it's genuinely the first time I've seen characters be designed like this. While each Uma has its individual strengths and weaknesses, you wouldn't level up your Uma's potential and star level just to boost their stats. After all, the single player mode always caters to their strengths, and given the right supports, any stat spread is possible. Instead, it caters to the set of skills unique to each Uma. What does this mean? Well, like any other gacha, I started out only playing 3-star Umas because, you know, more stars equals more strong. But after experimenting with the 2 and even 1 stars, you really can get just as far without significantly more effort. Of course, this depends because some Uma are more quirky than others, but it's not just the ability for these characters to do well. Even from a personality and visual standpoint, it feels like all the Uma have so much thought and care put into them. We're talking Smash Bros levels of understanding your IP, down to the campaign being unique to each Uma. So instead of the characters being important, instead it's the supports that are super important. Like really important. You've probably already heard how good max level Kira-san Black is without knowing the context. But what's the difference, you might be asking? It's still the same gacha system. Well, for one, it's way more flexible. Bear in mind, these supports are rarely built for specific Uma. In fact, you can't have the same support as a trainee you have, so good supports are often beneficial to a whole subclass of Uma. But more importantly, there are viable mid-rarity supports. For context, in Umamusume, duplicate supports are a must, and almost always outclass even supports of higher rarities but lower copies, which still benefits whales, but if you know anything about gacha supports, closes the gap for completely free-to-play players. You will naturally collect gold supports over your journey, because even if you're aiming for a rainbow support during the banner, what you should expect to get realistically is a handful of golds, and maybe a few rainbows if you've been good this Christmas. So pulling on the support banner doesn't feel like a complete waste if you don't hit pity, because you get something competitive. Okay, so you remember the wall? Well, what if instead of that, your gacha game really leaned into the gambling aspect, and gave you the chance to have better runs? With Umamusume's RPG style, that's exactly what you get. Random events define your runs, giving them a ton of variance. So instead of pretty much always getting a B+ rank or below, you'll average a B+, but you'll have a slim chance to get an A or even an A+ rank. Yes, sometimes the pendulum swings the other way, and it sucks. Like, how am I losing this? But it makes the process of grinding less linear. It makes me feel like my choices have way more impact than any other gacha I've played. And honestly, what better genre than gacha to gamble for that sweet, sweet dopamine? So great. You get a good run, but now what? You just go again and keep smashing your head against the wall? How is this any different from any other gacha? But this is where the genius lies. What if instead of just your miracle runs being useful, other past runs also had the potential to vastly improve your future runs? Well, wouldn't you believe it, that's just the legacy system. The final piece of the puzzle that ties all the design decisions together. These permanent parts of your account's history can be the reason to carry on with a run riddled with bad luck. Because when training an Uma, the legacy system means those seemingly doomed attempts still leave behind traces of brilliance, skills, stats, affinities, even unique quirks that can be passed down to future trainees. And not just traces, the legacy Uma I most frequently use aren't the ones that did the best in Korea. It's such a great idea to incentivize players to see a run through and not burn out from min-maxing their optimal runs. And it's such an interesting way to design a game. Umamusume is still a very new release, and it's already got a lot to offer, from the completeness and uniqueness that defines each character to its banger soundtrack, which you've been listening to all video. But I think it's already struck gold with its take on the gacha genre, and hopefully it'll inspire more to come.